The market smelled like fire oil and metal rust. Lights blinked from high towers. Loud voices shouted prices in many alien languages. The air was hot, thick, and full of noise in the far corner of the market, near a broken wall and under an old shade. There was a cage. Inside the cage sat a girl, small, quiet, and forgotten. She was not like the other aliens. Her skin was a pale silver, like the moon in winter. Her eyes were large and glowing faintly blue. Her white hair was messy and full of dust. Her clothes were torn pieces of cloth. She sat with her knees to her chest, arms around her legs, head low. People walked by her and laughed. "Look at that trash," one alien merchant said, pointing. "Not even good for cleaning." Another laughed. "She's too weak to work. Maybe sell her for meat." The girl didn't move. She didn't cry. She just stayed quiet, like she had heard all of this before. Many times. Then someone new walked into the market. He was tall, covered in dark armor scratched from battle. A long rifle hung across his back. His eyes were sharp, human, and tired. His name was Lucas. Lucas wasn't looking for anything. He had just returned from the outer battle lines. His ship had been grounded for repairs, and he wandered the market to clear his head. War had shown him too many terrible things. But as he walked past the cage, he stopped. Something pulled him back. He turned and looked again at the girl. She didn't look at him. But Lucas felt something strange, like a thread connecting them. He walked closer. "What is this?" Lucas asked a nearby seller. The alien chuckled. "A creature, weak and useless. We found her near the waste fields. No parents, no papers. She doesn't even speak, just sits and stares. She's alive," Lucas said, frowning. "She's a child." The seller laughed louder. "Then take her, human. Free garbage for you." Lucas ignored him. He stepped closer to the cage. The girl finally raised her head. Her eyes met his dot, and in that 1 second, something changed. Lucas saw fear, but also strength, and something else. Something deep inside her eyes. Royalty? No, that didn't make sense. Still, she didn't look broken. He crouched down. "What's your name?" he asked softly. The girl blinked. Her lips moved slowly. She said something in a strange, beautiful language. It was not trash talk. It was not beggar speech. It was ancient. Noble. Lucas knew that tone. He had heard it once during peace talks with the high houses of the stars. It was a royal dialect. The girl had just spoken like a queen. Lucas stood up slowly and turned to the seller. "You don't know who she is, do you?" The alien frowned. "She's no one. We checked her DNA. She's not on any registry." Lucas looked back at the girl. What if she was erased? The seller laughed. "Then she's dead already." Lucas stepped back, confused and curious. He looked at the girl again. She looked back at him. And this time, her lips moved again. "Help me," she whispered. In broken galactic common, .to. It was the first time anyone had heard her speak in that tongue. Lucas's breath caught. She was not trash. She was hiding something. He walked away that day, but his thoughts didn't. That night, while the city slept under neon clouds, Lucas sat in his bunk, still thinking about her, the way she spoke, the way she looked at him, the way her cage was placed far away, like someone didn't want her seen. Something was wrong, and Lucas had learned one thing from war. When something looks weak, it often hides great power. The next day, he returned to the market. She was still there, and this time, he brought food. The next morning, the market was full again. Merchants shouted. Children ran between legs. Smoke rose from hot oil pots. But near the broken wall, where the old cage stood, nothing had changed. She was still there, same torn cloth, same silver skin, same cold metal cage. But today, came back. Lucas walked through the crowd, carrying a small box. Inside, it was warm bread, fresh fruit, and a clean water flask. He ignored the laughter of the merchants. He ignored the stares. From aliens who remembered him from yesterday, he walked straight to the cage. The girl looked up when she saw him. Her eyes widened slightly, but not in fear. In surprise, no one had ever come back for her before. Lucas knelt beside the cage. "I brought something," he said quietly. He opened the box and placed it beside the cage bars. Slowly, the girl leaned forward. Her fingers thin and shaking right. Out through the metal bars, she touched the bread like it was a treasure. Lucas said nothing. He just watched. The girl took a bite, then another, then a sip of water. A tear slipped down her cheek, but she wiped it quickly. She didn't want to look weak. "What's your name?" Lucas asked again. Gently she paused. Then she whispered. "Valari." Lucas blinked. It was not a normal name. It sounded noble. "It was noble, Valari," he repeated. "That's a royal name, isn't it?" She didn't answer, but her eyes said yes. Lucas sat down beside the cage. "I've heard that name before. During the battle on Krenix Prime, the Empire used to whisper about the Valari bloodline. Wiped out, all gone. That was the story." The girl looked at him. She spoke again, this time clearer. "They hunted us. I ran." Her voice was small, but steady. Lucas leaned forward, whispering, "So they think you're dead." Valari nodded once. Lucas looked around. The merchants nearby were busy. No one was listening. Still, he spoke softly. "Why are you still here? Why not run?" She whispered. "Chains inside the cage. Locked." Lucas reached under the cage and found them. Thin plasma lock cuffs hidden near the floor, tied to her ankles. Strong enough to hold her, small enough to hide from sight. She was a prisoner, not a stray, and someone wanted her to disappear quietly. Lucas stood up and turned to the merchant. "This cage," he said, pointing. "How much?" The alien laughed. "If you want to buy the creature. She has a name," Lucas said coldly. "Valari?" The merchant stopped smiling. "You're serious?" "I'm very serious." The merchant leaned close, whispering, "She's not for sale. Not anymore. Someone paid to keep her here. You touch her again, you'll have trouble." Lucas's eyes narrowed. "Who paid you?" But the merchant turned away, pretending not to hear. Lucas walked back to the cage. "They won't let me buy." "You," he said. "Someone powerful wants you kept here." Like a ghost. Valari looked down. Lucas crouched low, meeting her eyes. "I won't leave you." She stared at him. "Why?" He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "Because you matter, and no one should live in a cage." She stared for a long time. Then she nodded. That night, Lucas returned again. He waited until the market was quiet and the lights dimmed. He hid in the shadows, watching the merchants close their stalls. The cage area was left unguarded. As usual, he crept forward, tools in hand. Valari saw him coming. She didn't speak, but her eyes lit up. Lucas crouched beside the cage and began working on the lock. His hands moved fast. He had done this kind of work before on the battlefield. Opening supply crates and prisoner cages under fire. Click. The lock opened. Valari didn't move. Lucas reached under and broke the chains on her ankles. One by one, he held out his hand. "Come with me," he whispered. Valari looked at it for a long moment, didn't move. Then she placed her hand in his. It was small, cold, but strong. She stepped out of the cage, for the first time in what felt like years. She stood under the open sky, and no one stopped her. Lucas pulled a cloak from his bag and wrapped it around her together. They slipped into the shadows. The cage sat empty behind them, but something else stayed there. 2. A feeling. A warning. Valari was no longer just a girl in a cage. She was a spark that could light a fire, and Lucas knew they were only just beginning. The sky over the city was dark, filled with flying ships and blinking signs. Neon lights reflected off wet metal streets. The night was loud, but Lucas and Valari moved like ghosts. They stayed low, hiding in alleys and old buildings. Lucas led the way. Valari stayed close behind. She didn't speak much, but her glowing, blue, quiet eyes said a lot. Lucas had seen many things during the war. He had seen leaders fall. He had watched monsters cry. He had walked through burning cities. But this girl, she was different. She carried something heavy. Not just sadness, not just fear. She carried secrets. Lucas took her to an old warehouse where no one would look. He had used it before when he needed to disappear. It was dusty, cold, and quiet. But safe. He handed Valari a small blanket. She didn't complain. She didn't ask for more. She just sat down, back against the wall, and wrapped the blanket around her. Lucas sat across from her. I need to know, he said after a while. Who are you really? Valari didn't answer at first. Then, in a calm voice, she said, you already know. Lucas nodded. You're royal, aren't you? Valari looked down. My name is Valari of House Katrain. I was second born, but when my sister died, I became heir. I was only 10. Lucas leaned forward. I've heard that name before. Your family ruled the Katrin cluster. You had peace treaties with 4 systems. Yes, she whispered. But then came the war. Not just against humans. Others. Hidden powers. We were targeted. You mean someone wanted your family gone? Valari looked at him with steady eyes. They didn't want us destroyed. They wanted us forgotten. Lucas felt cold. That's why they kept you in a cage. Not to kill you, but to erase you? Valari nodded slowly. They stripped my name, my records, my code. Even my blood markers were burned. Only my voice, only my memory proves I ever lived as Valari Katrin. Lucas looked at her with new understanding. She wasn't just a girl. She was living proof of a fallen kingdom. Why didn't you scream for help? He asked. Why stay silent? She answered quietly, because no one would listen. Not to a dirty creature in a cage. But if I stayed quiet, maybe I would live. Maybe someone would see me. Lucas was quiet. She had waited for someone to see her, and he had. He finally said, you have something they fear. Valari's eyes glowed a bit brighter. I have the last piece of the Katrin code, the starseed. It's hidden inside me. Lucas blinked. What is that? It's not a weapon, she said. It's something greater. It's a key, a memory crystal. It contains the map to our ancient fleet and the names of our true allies. With it, I can call them back. Lucas stood slowly. He ran his hand through his hair. This was bigger than anything he expected. And now that you're free, he said, they'll come for you. Valari nodded. Yes, and you too. Lucas smiled a little. Wouldn't be the first time I made powerful enemies. Valari tilted her head. Why do you help me? You could have walked away. Lucas looked into her eyes. Because I was tired of watching people suffer, he said. I've seen too much pain, too much cruelty. And when I saw you, I couldn't walk away. Valari didn't answer, but something in her face softened. For the first time, she looked. Not like a prisoner, not like a ghost. She looked like someone who still believed in kindness. That night, Lucius didn't sleep. He stayed near the window, holding his rifle, watching the street in the early hours. A sound came from the far wall, a soft beep. Then another. Lucas grabbed his weapon and looked at Valari. She was already standing. "They found us," she whispered. "Already." Lucas asked. "They have sensors." "I'm marked." Lucas nodded. "We move. Now?" He tossed supplies into his bag and pulled Valari by the hand. As they left through the back alley, the front door exploded with red light. 4 armored bounty hunters entered with glowing blades and scanners. But it was too late. Lucas and Valari were already gone, running into the night. Asterisk, the city never slept. Lights flashed from towers. Ships flew overhead like metal birds, but deep. In the lower levels, far from the noise and cameras, a human and an alien girl moved quietly through the shadows. Lucas kept his eyes sharp. His rifle was always ready. Valari walked beside him, silent but alert. They had escaped the bounty hunters for now, but more would come. Valari had royal blood, and in that blood she carried something powerful. The starseed, the last memory of her lost kingdom. If it was activated, the galaxy would know her truth. That truth could shake entire empires. They couldn't hide forever. They needed help. And Lucas had one last friend in the city. He took her to the outer district where the tech rebels lived. They were hackers, smugglers, broken soldiers, people who didn't fit in anywhere else. Lucas had fought beside one of them during the border wars, a woman named Mags. When they reached the underground bunker, a scanner beeped over Lucas's face. The steel door opened. A tall woman with a buzzcat and robot arm stood inside. Her eyes narrowed. "Lucas," she said. "Still alive." "Barely," he said, smiling. Her eyes moved to Valari. "Who's the kid?" "She's the reason." "I'm still fighting." Mags let them in. Inside, the bunker buzzed with machines and screens. Rebels moved quickly, watching cameras, fixing weapons, tapping on keys. Valari stood close to Lucas, overwhelmed by the noise. Mags stared at her. "She's not just a kid, is she?" Lucas nodded. "She's Valari, the last heir of House Katren." There was silence. Then Mags said, "You're serious?" "She has the starseed. She can prove who she is." Mags took a breath. "Then, we don't have time." She turned to her people. "Prep the chamber. We're activating royal tech." Lucas looked at Valari. "Are you ready?" Valari nodded once. "Yes. I must speak. I must be heard." They took her to the main room, a circular space lined with old imperial tech. At the center stood a glowing pedestal. Valari stepped forward and placed her hand on it. The moment her skin touched the crystal, light exploded through the room. Holograms appeared shining. Ships, royal bloodlines, flags of the Katran Empire. A symbol hovered in the air, a silver star, wrapped in blue fire. Everyone gasped. Even the rebels dropped their tools. Valari's voice echoed through the chamber, not small, not quiet, but powerful. "I am Valari Katran, heir to the Sapphire Throne. I carry the seed of memory, the truth of my people. I have lived in chains. I have been called trash. But I rise today to remember who I am." And then she fell to her knees. The light faded. The seed had been opened. Her energy was spent. Lucas rushed to her side, catching her before she hit the ground. She looked up at him, her voice weak. "Now they know." Lucas looked at her, then stood. He turned to the stunned rebels. "No more hiding," he said. "You all saw it. She's not a creature, not trash. She's royalty. She's been hunted, locked in a cage like an animal. And no one stood for her." Lucas paused. Then, slowly, he did something no one expected. He dropped to one knee. He bowed his head deeply and placed his hand over his heart. I, a human of no name and no power, kneel for Valari Katrenby, 'cause I see her. Gasps filled the room. One rebel whispered, "He's bowing like she's a queen." Another said, "He's serious. He means it." Then Mag stepped forward. She looked at Valari, then at Lucas, and then without a word, she bowed too, one by one. The rebels bent their heads, not because of fear, not because of power, but because they saw her now. They saw not a dirty alien girl, not trash, but a queen without a throne. Valari sat up, watching all of them with wide eyes. Tears ran down her cheeks. But this time, she let them fall. No one laughed. No one turned away. Lucas knelt closer and said softly, "They can't erase you now." And she whispered back, "Because you remembered me, when I had nothing." That night, the image of her activation was secretly sent across old rebel channels. The galaxy didn't know yet, but something had changed. The girl they caged was rising. Lucas had seen war before, but never a war like this. This time, he wasn't fighting for land, or orders, or glory. He was fighting because he believed in something. Or rather, someone. VLAR, I thought the girl who once sat in a cage like trash now carried the heart of a kingdom inside her, and the galaxy was starting to notice. After her activation in the rebel bunker, her name spread. Quietly at first, in whispers, through old rebel signals and ancient royal coach annuls. People who had once served House Katren were beginning to stir. Hidden allies, exiled knights, forgotten fleets. All started listening again, but not everyone welcomed her return. Her enemies moved faster. A bounty was placed huge, dangerous, and deadly. Alive if possible, the bounty message said, but dead is acceptable. Now every hunter in 5 systems was after them, not because Valari was a threat, but because truth was a threat. And Lucas was now hunted too. They escaped the bunker just before the first strike. Mags had warned them. A data leak exposed their location. Too late to stop it. You'll have to run, she told Lucas. Take her somewhere they won't follow. Somewhere cold, silent, dark. Lucas nodded. I know a place. He grabbed Valari's hand, and they slipped out before the airstrike came. They ran through sewer tunnels, old train lines, back doors through ruined stations. Valari didn't complain once, even though her legs shook, even though she was still weak from activating the seeds she followed. She trusted him now, and Lucas. He was ready to protect her with his life, too. Nights later, they hid inside a crashed cargo ship in the dead zone of Sector 19. No power, no life signs, just rust and silence. It was perfect, but the silence didn't last. Lucas heard it first, low hum in the distance. A ship coming fast. He peeked through the broken window. A red light blinked on the edge of the sky. They found us, he said. VELAR. I didn't panic. She stood calmly, her voice quiet. Then we make our stand. Lucas looked at her. You're not scared? I am, she said. But I'm done running. He nodded slowly. Then we fight together. The bounty hunters came fast. 4 of them. All armored, all armed. They moved like machines, scanning the wreck for signs of life. Lucas. Set traps. Old battlefield tricks. Flash mines. Smoke bombs. Noise decoys. The first one stepped on a mine blast of light. Scream, then silence. But the others kept coming. Lucas fought hard to down in the corridor with close combat. Blood on the wall, his shoulder bleeding. But the 4th one, he Found Valari, she was in the control room. Trying to hide behind a crate, the hunter pointed his weapon at her. "This is nothing personal, girl," he growled. "Just money." Valari stood tall, even as her knees trembled. Then Lucas appeared behind the hunter, blood on his face, breathing hard. "It's personal to me." He fired once. The hunter dropped. The silence after the fight was heavy. Lucas sat against the wall, tasting his hand to his wound. Valari knelt beside him. "You're hurt," she said. "I've been worse," he muttered. Valari looked down. Her voice shook slightly. "You almost died because of me." Lucas smiled weakly. "Then it would have been worth it." She looked into his eyes. "Why do you care so much?" He wiped blood from his cheek. "Because when I first saw you in that cage, I saw someone who still believed in something. Even if the world called you nothing, you didn't believe it." Valari was quiet. Then, very softly, she reached out and touched his hand. "Thank you," she whispered. Lucas blinked, surprised. It was the first time she had touched him on her own. It was not a royal gesture, not a command. It was simple, human, and full of meaning. Later that night, Lucas stitched his wound while Valari sat by the window, watching the stars. "Do you think more will come?" she asked. Lucas nodded. "Always." "Then we can't stop." "No," he said. "We can't." She looked at him again. Her silver hair now clean, her face no longer hiding behind dirt. "Then we keep going," she said. Lucas smiled on that moment. She looked nothing like the girl in the cage. She looked like someone becoming. More, not just a queen, but a leader, far away. On a distant planet, a very old man watched her hologram. He wore silver robes, eyes glowing with ancient tech. "She lives," he whispered. Behind him, soldiers knelt. "Prepare the fleet," he said. "The star has returned." The storm outside the ruins howled like a wild beast. Cold wind swept through the broken walls, shaking loose wires and dust. The sky above was a dark sea, filled with thick clouds and lightning. The ground below was dead gray rocks, cracked soil, and silence. This place was forgotten. Once it had been a temple of stars. Now, it was only bones. Lucas and Valari stood at the edge of a large stone door deep beneath the surface. They had traveled across 3 zones to reach it, with old maps and rebel codes guiding them. Valari stared at the door, her glowing blue eyes wide with memory. "This is where it all began," she whispered. Lucas looked around. "This place." She nodded slowly. "This was our family's birth ground, where the first Catron queen touched the flame of knowledge, where the royal blood first awakened." Lucas brushed his hand over the door's surface. Strange symbols lit up under his fingers. "How do we get inside?" he asked. Valari stepped forward. She didn't press a button. She didn't speak a word. She simply placed her hand against the cold stone. For a moment, nothing. Then the ground shook. A low hum filled the air. Blue light poured from the lines in the stone. The door split open with a soft hiss inside. The air was warm. Golden lights danced across the walls. Ancient machines hummed quietly. Still alive after centuries, Lucas followed Valari in. She walked slowly, almost like her feet remembered the path on their own. They entered a large circular chamber. In the center stood a tall crystal pillar floating above the ground. It pulsed like a heart. I approached it. Lucas stayed back, weapon ready just in case. Valari reached out, her fingers trembling, and touched the crystal. A blinding flash filled the room. When the light faded, Valari stood alone at the center. Her eyes were closed, but something had changed. Her hair floated softly as if touched by a breeze no one else could feel. Her skin glowed gently. Her hands, once thin and weak, now looked steadier, stronger. Lucas stepped forward. "Valari," he said, carefully. She opened her eyes. They were no longer just blue. They burned with light. Like tiny stars, she looked at him and smiled. "I remember now," she said softly. Lucas lowered his weapon. "Remember what? Who I am." "What? I? Carry. What I must do." She turned toward him fully. "The royal blood is more than a name. It's a bond, a responsibility." A fire passed from one heart to the next. Lucas stepped closer. "And now it's awake," Valari nodded. "Yes, the bloodline is alive, and it's calling." She held out her hand. The floating crystal above them responded. Images burst into the airstar maps. Ship coordinates, secret codes, the locations of old Catrane loyalists and fleets in hiding. Lucas's eyes widened. This is your army," he said. Valari nodded. "Scattered, sleeping, but still loyal. Some of them have waited for decades." "Waiting for what?" "For the sign," Valari said. "For the heir to return." Lucas looked at her, truly looked. That girl from the cage was gone. This was a queen now, not in crown or robe, but in presence. Hours later, they left the temple. The door sealed behind them, silent once more. They stood together at the top of the ridge. The wind howled, but the stars above were now clear. Valari, I looked up. "Somewhere out there, they're watching," she said. Lucas nodded. "Then let them see." She turned to him. "You never asked for anything. You never asked for reward, for title, for power." "I didn't need to," Lucas said. "I saw what mattered. That was enough." Valari took a deep breath. "You are not just a protector now. You are the first of my new order." Lucas raised an eyebrow. "Order?" She smiled. "The guard of the flame, the ones who protect the seed." "You are the first knight." Lucas chuckled. "Knight? I'm just a tired soldier with scars and bad knees." "But you bowed before anyone else," Valari said. "Not because I demanded it, but because you saw my worth." He looked at her, serious now. "I did," he said. "And I still do." They stood there, two small figures in the vast wildness of space. But something big had changed. The galaxy didn't know it yet, but soon they would, because the girl once called trash was now a flame reborn, and behind her stood a human who chose to kneel not for power, but for truth. Far away, in a floating throne room lit with red fire, a shadowed figure slammed his fist. On the table, "She awakened the temple," he growled. A second voice replied, calm but cold. "Then we must strike before the fleets gather." The figure's eyes glowed red. "Send every hunter we have. The queen rises. But I will bury her." Again. The throne was not made of gold. It was made of metal, worn and dented. Rescued from old warships and bolted together by rebel hands, it sat in the center of an old station, once a mining post, now transformed into a war council chamber. Lights flickered overhead. Screens blinked. Fighters stood at attention. Loyalists gathered like stars pulled into orbit, and at the center of it all stood a girl once left in a cage. Valari, I know, longer wrapped in rags or dirt. Now she wore a simple black robe lined with silver. Her silver hair had been brushed smooth, glowing under the lights. A small crest, the flame of Catrane, rested above her heart. She stood before them not as a child, not as a lost thing. As a queen, Lucas stood beside her. His armor was repaired. His rifle now carried the symbol of the Flame Guard. He didn't like fancy titles. He didn't ask for them. But today, They mattered, because when Valari took the throne, she would not be alone. The galaxy would see. She had a protector. A knight who chose her before anyone else believed. Valari raised her voice. Her words echoed across the hall. I was once locked in a cage, she said, sold for scraps, mocked, beaten, forgotten. The crowd was silent, but one human saw something different. He didn't ask who I was. He didn't demand proof. He knelt. Not to power, but to worth. And because of that act, I remembered who I was. She looked over the crowd. Some of you lost your homes, your ships, your pride. Some were forced to kneel when you should have stood. But today, I rise for all of us, not with revenge, but with memory. Her voice grew stronger. The royal blood has returned, not to rule, but to restore. Cheers erupted. Old soldiers raised their weapons in salute. Former commanders, long in hiding, dropped to one knee. Children of exiles clapped and cried. Across the systems, signals lit up. The fleets were waking. Ships, long silent, began to respond to royal codes. The House of Katrin was reborn. After the ceremony, Valari stood alone on the balcony, looking into the stars. Lucas stepped beside her. You sure you're ready for this? He asked. Valari smiled. No, but I don't think anyone ever is. He laughed softly. Fair enough. They stood in silence for a while, the stars blinking quietly above. Then Valari spoke. You know what I remember most from that cage? Lucas shook his head. I remember how everyone walked past me, she said. Like I wasn't real. Like I was nothing. But then you stopped. You looked at me. You asked my name. Lucas looked away, a little shy. Didn't seem like much at the time, but it was everything, Valari whispered. She reached into her robe and pulled out a small pin. It was shaped like a glowing flame with wings. This is the first symbol of the reborn royal guard, she said. There will be many after you, but only one first. She gently pinned it to Lucas's chest. He stared at it, then at her. You know I'm not good at ceremonies, he muttered. She smiled. That's why you're perfect. Later that night, a rebel came running into the command center. High alert, he shouted. Unmarked fleet approaching. 4 warships, heavy armor, cloaked signatures. The officers moved fast. Sirens blared. Red lights flashed. Valari and Lucas ran to the central screen. The fleet showed 4 dark ships with glowing red cores, known assassin-class destroyers. Lucas's jaw tightened. It's him, Valari nodded. The one who wants me erased. She turned to the crew. Prepare defense shields. Alert the outposts. No one fires unless I say the rebel admiral stepped forward. You don't want to strike first. No, she said. Let them speak first. Let them reveal what they are. A call came through the main comms. A tall alien with black armor and burning red eyes appeared on the screen. This is your final warning, he said. Give us the girl. Burn the seed. Or we erase this station from history. Valari stepped forward. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't tremble. She simply said, You already tried to erase me. And you failed. The screen cracked. The enemy fleet charged. But before the first missile could launch, a second signal lit up behind them. Dozens of ships dropped out of warp cage from loyalist cruisers, coded under the seed signal. They surrounded the attackers in seconds. The hunters were trapped. The station remained untouched back in the chamber. Valari sat down for the first time. Not just on metal, but on her throne. Lucas stood behind her, his rifle on his back, his hand on his chest. Guess you really are a queen now, he said. Valari smiled. I was always a queen, she said. They just didn't see it. Lucas nodded. They do now. And across the stars, her message echoed. I was once treated like trash. Now I rise, not alone, but with those who remembered me when I had nothing. And with them, I will light the stars again.